So first thing to note is that in the video I actually am using two different rectangles or glasses for the animation. I have one set basically set up to be the non-broken display for the first 45-50 seconds of the animation, and then I have another set up to be that which breaks. So what I had to do is basically duplicate these and have one set to only display for so many frames in the animation until exactly the point when the marble hits the glass, and then I turn off the visibility of that one and turn on the visibility of the breaking set. So basically all we need to do here is hit D to duplicate this glass here, and then I'm going to immediately tap my right mouse button, which throws the duplicated object exactly to where it came from. So now we have these two objects down here. So I'm going to go ahead and rename the one I just duplicated as, I'll go ahead and double click there and rename that as glass broken. So this will be the set we'll use to break, and then I'll rename the other one glass not broken. Hit enter there. Say we have an animation set up and we plan for something to happen to this glass at 5 seconds in the animation. Say we're going to have like a piece of wood or something come flying at it at exactly 5 seconds, and that's when we want to break. So what we would do is we would want for the first 5 seconds just the glass not broken to display. So we would come over here, tap I to insert a keyframe on the visibility of this in the 3D viewport, and I to insert a keyframe of the visibility for when it renders. And the visibility displaying in the 3D viewport, that's not really important for the actual rendering of the animation, but it helps us visualize what's going on in the scene. So we can then right click this and drag this to 5 seconds here, and then we want to click off the render icon and tap I to insert a keyframe, then click off the viewport visibility icon and tap I to insert a keyframe there. So we have for the first 5 seconds the glass not broken rectangle is what will be displayed. So likewise we need to go to the glass broken, and we do not want this to be displayed until the exact frame after the glass not broken. So we would click off the visibility there and then tap I to insert a keyframe, then click off the visibility of what will be rendered and tap I to insert a keyframe. Bring this along to 5 seconds here. We want the glass broken to come exactly on right at that time, so then we'll click on the visibility and then click on the visibility of the render and tap I over both of those, and you see when I do that a keyframe emerges. So now we have this set up exactly to where for the first 5 seconds glass broken is off and glass broken is seen. The instant we pass that, we see that the glass broken, what will be shattered and broken, will now be displayed. Okay, so let's select our glass broken here, and let's hit tab to go into edit mode, tap A to select everything, and then W and to subdivide a bunch of times until we get quite a lot of faces on here. And then we can hit tab to go back into object mode, select our add modifier tab here, and then select the Decimate modifier. And so we want to turn on triangulate of the decimate, and as we bring the ratio down, you'll see the decimate modifier in work. So what the decimate modifier does is it simplifies a mesh, but in this case simplifying our mesh in this way and adding triangulate makes a really cool kind of shattered glass effect here. And we can see the face count here get smaller and smaller as we bring the ratio down. So we'll bring that to about like that, just so we have a pretty good mix of really large and very small pieces. We can go ahead and hit apply, and then I want to hit tab and to go into edit mode and tap W and subdivide all of these one more time. So this will give us a really good mix of large and small pieces. So we'll hit tab to get out of that. And so next what we want to do is go to object and select quick effects and quick explode. And quick explode on its own does a pretty cool effect. If I just right click the timeline and start to move it, you'll see now that the glass is shattered and breaking in a pretty cool way. Only this doesn't suit our needs exactly, because what we need to happen is the glass to break at a specific point in space. Say like something was running into like the left bottom side of it, we would want the breaking of the glass to start there and to react to its environment in a more realistic way. It does do something really good for us. It separates this whole object here into a bunch of little clumps, which are great for what we'll then use it for. So when we added that quick effect explode, it added this explode modifier here and then also a particle system. So if we click on the particle system to edit it, first under this emission segment here, we need to click emit from verts. This gives us a more shard-like effect from our pieces. And then next, under velocity, we want to turn the normal all the way down to 0 and the random as well all the way down to 0. The point of this is to basically get the effect to segment all these pieces, but we don't want them turned or out of place until the object we will have later to break the glass affects it. What we want to do is move the timeline back to right at the point when we added this quick explode, and then we can just move along our frames a little bit at a time until we see the overall frame here start to fall a little bit. And what that's telling us is that all these pieces have now been exploded, but because we turned the rotation all the way to 0 and the random bits of rotation down to 0, it's all moving as one solid piece. And that's what we need. So when we click on this and we see this all moving as one piece, it's letting us know that yes, all these pieces have been segmented, but they're not being rotated. So that's what we need to happen. So we'll click on the modifier tab, and we can click apply on the explode, and then to get rid of this particle system, we'll just click here and click the minus sign. And now all that's gone, but we have the effects fished out of there that we wanted from it. Our glass broken has moved a little bit from position of glass not broken. So what we can do is just momentarily turn on the visibility of the glass not broken. So we can just press 1 to go into front view and then hit G to grab and move this glass not broken right to the position where the glass broken is, so they are on an even keel there. Go ahead and turn glass not broken back off and click on glass broken. So next what we want to do is click on the modifier tab and add a Solidify Modifier, and this will give some depth to our glass here. And we can go ahead and increase the thickness here. I'll just set it to 0.0120, and then I'll go ahead and click on the glass not broken and turn its visibility on, and go ahead and add a Solidify Modifier to it and make sure it's bumped up to 0.012 as well. And then so we can turn the glass not broken back off and select our glass broken. Okay, so we're getting close to the finish line here. We just have a few more things. So we can actually now apply this Solidify Modifier. Then I want to hit T to bring up my tools, and under the Physics tab we can select Add Active, and then we want to select the Physics tab of our properties here, and under Rigid Body Dynamics make sure Enable Deactivation and Start Deactivated are both checkmarked. And what this will do is, because our animation goes on for 5 seconds before anything is getting broken, we don't want Blender to be thinking about any of the physics of any of these pieces until this glass is hit upon. Okay, in addition to these settings, we need to click under Rigidbody Collisions, and we need to make sure collision margin is on. And we're setting all this up right now because once we separate this giant broken glass into all these little shards, they will all inherit all of these physics properties. So it's important we get all this stuff right now before we separate everything. But we want to increase this margin to 0.1, which is actually pretty high for a collision margin, but if we don't increase it pretty high, then all the little pieces will sometimes have trouble coming to a halt when they hit the floor. They have like this kind of shaking problem, so we have to increase the margin here pretty high. We can also increase this dampening just a little bit so that the pieces don't go too crazy. And we also want to increase the bounciness, because if you want anything to have bounciness, both parties have to have the bounciness turned up. So basically, all the glass pieces have to have some amount of bounciness, and then the ground that I'll be using will have to have bounciness turned up too. So I want a little bit of bounce when these pieces hit the ground. That should be good. Alright, before we separate these, we're going to have to go back to the frame 0, send the timeline all the way back. For some reason, when I go to set origin points for multiple objects, if the object has been animated in any way, then those origin points won't set correctly. So we go back to frame 0, and we click on the visibility of the glass broken object temporarily here, and then hit Tab to go into edit mode, and we can go to Mesh, Vertices, separate by loose parts, and this will take just a second because Blender's got to figure out a lot of new little objects here. And then we can hit Tab to go back into object mode, and then select Tools, Set Origin, Origin to Center of Mass, and now all our shard objects are all set up to go to work properly within the physics. So as soon as we drag this timeline here, you'll see that the glass broken pieces immediately go back to not being visible because we didn't keyframe that. And you also see all these individual glass broken shards that we separated that object into. Also, they all inherited the keyframes that we created for the main master object there. So far in our animation, we have 5 seconds going along, and then we plan at that point for something to happen, and then we switch over to the broken set. So let's tap Shift A and add a plane, and hit S to scale the plane, and we're going to go to Physics and go ahead and click Add Passive. And if we hit Tab, we can tap W a few times to subdivide this plane. And when you're using rigid body physics in Blender, sometimes it helps to subdivide your ground object a couple of times so that all the pieces will respond better to the collision. Click Tab to go back into object mode. In the physics playground video that I created, I actually started out with a base material of glass before putting on this texture, which if you use Sensei format, you can just start it out that way and select here. But we can also emulate that a little bit. We can just click on mirror here, and we could increase the reflectivity a little bit. We could also, under transparency, just bring our alpha up a little bit. Now our material, which we only have to adjust these settings for this one material because it's the same material on both of these objects and all these little shards, so it changes everything all at once. But now it reflects looking like glass a little bit more. Okay, so let's go ahead and make something to break this glass. So I'm going to select a little piece of glass there and just tap Alt Shift and right click. Sensei format moves the cursor to the selected object. Tap Shift A to add a cube, and I'm going to hit G to grab, pull this out, S to scale it down some, S, tap middle mouse to constrain it to stretch it out horizontally, G to grab, and move it up here. Then I'm going to tap Alt Shift right click again to move my 3D cursor to this object's origin point, and tap Shift A, add a cube, scale that way down, and then I'm going to hit S to scale, middle mouse to constrain it along the Z-axis there, and maybe scale it down just a little bit more, G to grab, move that down. I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to select that face, hit E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, and so now I'm just going to have kind of like a pendulum hammer that can swing into my glass. When I set the physics of this up, I'm going to want this little block area of my hammer to be the heaviest part. So to properly represent that, I need to move the origin point of this object to the center of this fat area. So I'll tap A to select everything inside of this mesh, and G to grab, and middle mouse to constrain, and I'll just move it up to where the origin point is now here, where the big block is. hit tab to go back into object mode, G to grab, middle mouse to constrain, and bring that down like that. Okay, so now all I need to do is click Add Active on my little hammer thing, and click on the top part, click Add Passive, and then I'm going to select my bar here, and then shift select my hammer thing, and click Connect, and change the type to hinge. And when I do that, it gives me these arrows here. I'm going to go ahead and click on these arrows, and then under my object data thing here, I'm going to, under display, click X-ray so that I can always see how these arrows are looking. So first of all, I'm going to want this axis point of this swinging hammer to be up here. So I can either tap Shift and right click to move the arrows to where the 3D cursor was, which was right there, or I could have just hit G to grab and move it up. So we've made this pendulum thing, but there's no guarantee that it's going to spin in the right order, so let's go ahead and click our back button and then press play. Then we can just select our little bar here and hit G to grab and kind of move it around, or we can hit R to rotate, and we can see how this kind of object is spinning around here. And we see that's not really going the direction we want, so I'm going to tap Alt-A to stop the animation and hit Control-Z to get that back there. And so this was spinning around kind of like this. So I'm going to try to mentally imagine how I need to change this axis to match that rotation. So it's actually spinning around the Z-axis there. So to get that to go the way I want, I'm going to have to move the arrows. So I'll hit 1 to go in front view, and I'll just select this, hit R to rotate, and Control to constrain, and that should do it. So we'll hit our back button and press play and select this and hit G to grab, and we see as we're moving this, it's swinging in the direction we want, which is good. So I'll hit pause and then go back there. I'm going to tap 3 to go into right view, and so my object is moved a little bit from here. So what I'm going to do is select both the arrows and shift select the hammer and hit G to grab and move it up there. And then I'm going to just select my hammer part and not the arrows and hit R to rotate it, Control to constrain, and hit G to grab and move it up here. So now when we hit play, it should fall. There we go, good. So the animation is set for this non-broken window here to be fine for the first 5 seconds and then be hit at 5 seconds. So what we need to do is set this up to where this doesn't go off until 5 seconds. So what we'll do is, selecting on this hammer, I'm going to tap Alt-Shift, right-click to move my 3D cursor to the object, then tap Shift-A to add a cube, S to scale it down, and then S, and then tap middle mouse and drag along up and down like this, so I can then create a pole to hold it up there. So I'm going to click Add Active on my pole, and I'm going to click on the Physics tab here, and under Rigid Body I'm going to select Animated, because we're going to be animating this to move out of the way at a certain time to let the hammer come down. Tap I to insert a keyframe, and then bring this along to about 4.5 seconds, and tap I to insert another keyframe, and then right at the 5-second line I'm going to hit G and move this to where it goes all the way underneath the floor, and tap I again. So we see if we move this, our holder object moves under. So now if we press play, you see it moves there and knocks the glass right out. Once we've let this play once, we can drag the timeline and kind of watch this in slow-mo, and we see right there at the moment of contact where our kind of hammer thing is shattering the glass. So if we wanted for this to have a much stronger impact, we could just select on our hammer and click Calculate Mass, and then pick something really heavy here like bronze. And then reset this and play this animation. And bam, we have all those pieces being flown far out there. Okay, so there's a few things we can do to clean this up. So if I hit play, for one, we see when I immediately hit play, the hammer falls a little bit. We don't want that, so I could go back here under the physics tab of my little hammer object, click on collision margin, and then also create one for my animated little riser pole. And then now if we hit play, we see that it actually pops up a little bit because of that collision margin. So we could go back here, select this, and drop that down from maybe 0.04 to 0.01, and maybe change this one to 0.01 also. Hit play. Now there's not much noticeable movement there. So actually we might even take this one down a little bit and change it to 0.005, and that's decreasing it by half. And there, so that looks much better. So the second problem I have is that if we click play on this animation, the glass is actually switching over a little bit before the contact with the hammer, which is not exactly what we want. So what we can do is just select these two keyframes of our riser pole here, and we can hit G to grab, and we can move them back a little bit. And what this will do is cause this to drop sooner so that we're not left with any lag time for the mirror switching out to the broken set. And see there, when we do that, the timing meets perfectly. So we have our 5 seconds of just the standard regular glass, and then right at our timed event in our animation, we have it switch over so that it can be affected by the physics. So I'm going to go ahead and click my tilde key down here over my camera view and just set this up, a little bit of a preview show here, and then we'll go ahead and tap Alt A for a final view of this animation in the 3D viewport.